begin by giving us your name and the unit that you served with in World War II?
My name is Webster Barnett, and I served in Prime C Company of the 86 in January 1943. And then my platoon was moved to Headquarters Company, 1st Battalion of the 86, which is really across the street from where I'd been before. And I was a squad leader in an ammunition and pioneer platoon of about 30 men. I had charge of 10 soldiers in that platoon, and what our mission was to defuse mines, to set up demolition courses, to build small bridges, and to carry ammunition to the line companies, and to remove dead and casualties from the battlefield. That's what we did. And we also sometimes supported the line companies with Bangalore torpedoes to break up the barbed wire.
And when did you join the 10th right after basic training? Or where did you do your basic training?
I did my basic training almost twice at Camp Hale, Colorado. I was, orders were cut for me at Fort Sheridan in Chicago. I'd enlisted at Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, near where our family was at the time. I just finished 1 semester of college in Connecticut, and came back and thought it was time to join the 10th Mountain Division. So I was a volunteer inductee with 3 letters of recommendation to join. And my orders were cut directly for Camp Hale, and I was the only one at that time on the train for Camp Hale, and arrived in the dead of winter, you bet. Several feet of snow at Pando, Colorado.
I've heard a lot about Camp Hale, but are there any experiences about Camp Hale that stick out in your mind?
Well, there are many. One of them was that my sergeant, platoon sergeant, suggested that, well, he didn't suggest, he ordered us to take some old dynamite and take it up into a remote area of beyond the camp and burn it. You could do that with dynamite sticks by opening up the packages and little by little burn it up so it wouldn't be a danger anymore. So we went up to this little encampment up on a little creek up there, and it was a wonderful little camp. A soldier had put a phonograph up there and had a little kind of a hut arrangement for his off-duty time. And so we were up there, and out in front where you'd normally have a campfire, we began burning this dynamite. For our efforts, we had terrible headaches from the ingredients in the dynamite when it was burning. And it took us several days to get over that effects of the poisoning of that burning dynamite. Yeah, that was one occasion. Another memorable occasion to me was rock climbing, learning how to rock climb. and rappelling off the rocks. Of course, learning how to ski. There were some Norwegians who had come over to freedom fight for their country that was occupied by the Nazis, and they came and helped train our troops for skiing, and some of them trained me how to ski. I hadn't skied much before, so I was glad to learn that skill and was able to ski during my training at Camp Hale. Yeah. Jinx Falkenberg was there, a famous actress at the time, and I had the chance to put her snow boots on, which I thought was a high honor at the time. She visited Camp Hale, different parts of the camp, little morale builder there. She was a beautiful lady. And Joe Lewis was there, and we had a great time watching him, and other notables during our training.
From Camp Hale, then you came to Camp Swift, and quite a change in camp.
Terrible change. We were training all those at time at 10,000 feet. So our blood was geared for that high altitude work, and then to come down to almost sea level at Camp Swift was a great change. And when we woke up in the morning, the first few mornings, we felt like we'd been hit with a baseball bat until we became acclimated to that low countryside. I think our blood had to thin some, and then things worked out, and we worked hard at this Camp Swift area for 2 or 3 months and qualified for various different skills down there as infantry people, and finished our training, and we're eager to go. We knew we were going to go somewhere, we didn't know where, until General Hayes came in the fall of 1944, and came back from a visit to Washington, D.C., and called us together and said, "The goose hangs high," which means in hunting language that the goose is ready to eat because it's aged long enough on the tree hanging there, so it'll be pretty tender and good to eat. And so what it means was our time was getting ready. And so we didn't know where we were going to Burma. We preferred, most of us, to go to Europe because we could identify with that culture better than the one over there. But we wanted mountains, of course, because we love the mountains, wherever we were sent. And it turned out to be that we went to Camp Patrick Henry in December, and then down to Newport News, and took our ship to Naples, Italy. Long trip, 11 days, zigzagging across the Atlantic through Gibraltar to Italy. And we're shocked in Italy. We were on the SS Argentina. The whole 86th Regiment was on that one ship. While on ship, like a lot of young men, we couldn't smoke at certain times, but we learned how to chew. And I had a plug of tobacco and took a chunk of that in my mouth. We got into a heavy sea, and that ship did figure eights, and my stomach did too. And so, to my embarrassment, the doctors had to pump out my stomach to neutralize all of that. And so that was a shock. I remember also being assigned to KP on the ship. They had these enormous, great bowls to cook in, and we cooked oatmeal, and I would stir that, and was about this deep and this big around for the soldiers' breakfast on a few days. And we saw some movies on the deck at night, you know. We'd come up and we were stacked about 6 or 8 feet high, 8 men high. And that got a little, not only smelly, but it got a little bit too close for comfort, and we were awfully glad to get up on deck once in a while. Yeah.
I know you arrived there in Italy, and you had some time before the first battle began.
Exactly.
And then you were part of the Riva Ridge Belvedere.
That's correct.
And all of that time following. Are there any particular incidents or things that you recall that stand out during the actual time that you were in combat from the Riva Ridge?
Well, our mission at Riva Ridge was in support of the 3 line companies that were going up to capture the ridge itself. And we were at Casualties, I believe, the little town where the engineers had built a cable to the top of Camp Hale, which is one of the heights of Riva Ridge, in order to take supplies and evacuate casualties. And our mission was to disguise ourselves as Italians a few nights before the climb and come down the little stream, Gardano stream, and build footbridges across the stream in order for the infantry to climb up. And we disguised ourselves so the Germans wouldn't be attracted to something strange going on, you see. We just think of it as Italian workers down there. And that worked out all right. And then when the actual battle started, we were really down at Casualties, where the bottom of that cable part was, in this little tiny hamlet. And I can remember being under a dining room table in a house, modest Italian house, with the shelling going on. You know, they were beginning to lob shells down there too. And so that was our first taste of battle, as far as I could. I never did get to the top of Riva Ridge, but I helped others get up there in my battalion, the 1st Battalion, the 86.
What about from there to, I know the war ended at Lake Garda or thereabouts. Is there anything else in between that stands out?
Backing up a little bit, before we went to Riva Ridge, I was stationed from 1st of January to the time we had our first battle, almost 6 weeks in Lozano and Belvedere, and made lifelong friends there of the native people. And the pastor of the local Roman Catholic Church and I became good friends. I was an Episcopalian, of course, but thought of myself as a non-Roman Catholic myself. And so we had great times together, and we lived in a Roman Catholic school that the nuns had run until this serious time of the war, and they were taken elsewhere, but we used their quarters up on the top floor and helped supply the caretakers, who became our good friends, with some of our surplus supplies so they could have better eating. And they also prepared wonderful meals for us. So it was a great deal. Later, as soon as we were preparing for the first of our combat, officers suddenly appeared in Lozano and Belvedere, this little mountain town facing Mount Belvedere, Lozano. And they saw these beds. We were enlisted men, so we got kicked out, and the officers took our nice quarters. But all in all, that was a nice preparation for what we later found to be quite serious combat. And after Riva Ridge, my memory isn't very clear about each step because there was so much shelling going on that I get confused about where exactly we were going. But we in the area of Della Torracho, which was one of the areas, we were assigned to go into what we call Purple Heart Valley. It became famous because it was such a dangerous area to bring back those who were killed and also other casualties to help the graves registration people, whoever they were. But that was our assignment on litters. And for that effort, we got Bronze Stars for that. And then we were, Casteldiano was a place that we paused after the Belvedere experience. Casteldiano was just the beginning of the end of that high mountain business where we were beginning to think about spring offensive into the Po Valley, which was a long way off, but it was still something that we anticipated. And we were bivouacked, my squad, in a farmhouse near Casteldiano. And we met the family, and right in the middle of combat, we were in this house waiting for assignment to help with the battlefield. And we met the family, and they thought they should entertain us. So they had a little stone barn and an accordion and a fiddle, and they had a local family dance, including us soldiers in my squad, which was a wonderful thing in the middle of the war. And they had a cute daughter, and I helped her carry the water from the creek up to the house and became quite fond of her. And then the next minute we were moved, but we remembered, and her name was Giovanna Benassi at the time, and I corresponded with her ever since World War II. For the past 60 years, I have sent messages back and forth, met her family, grandchildren, and so forth. They now live in another town, but we went back there and visited the farm and so on. And she was married to a man who's Mattioli, so her name has changed, and of course, and she has her family. Now she's, I'm 80 and she must be about the same age, but they live in their own home. And so when I go back to Italy, I like to go to Lozano and see the Curti family and also the Benassi Mattioli family, and enjoy that, yes. And then that other story, entering into the Po, is another phase. But that ended the high mountains.
You mentioned that part of your job was to recover casualties.
Yes.
That must have been difficult.
Well, you know, it's a vague thing. I can't even remember. I know the body bags and the assignment to do it, but somehow that's erased. I don't have a clear memory of that. I do remember the shelling. And one of my friends was in my company, became quite beside himself, nervous-wise, and was shaking. And in the medical, we had an aid station in one of the little areas, and Rupert and Werner von Trapp were friends of ours. They lived in our barracks assigned to my battalion, you know, in Camp Hale and ever since. And so they were running the aid station. So I was with this fellow, and then I thought Rupert was kind enough, he thought I needed a little settling down too. So he gave me a shot of whiskey up there out of the, I don't know how, they must have a little supply. But I remember him doing that, and then that's about it from that angle.
Did you have any close bonds that you made with any buddies in your regiment?
Yes, John Julian from Washington, D.C., he'd come from Salisbury, South Carolina, and he became the country clerk. We kidded him because we were all skiers and he didn't like the mountains very well, but we called him the world's champion snowshoer. So he was a company clerk and would come along following us wherever we were on maneuvers and things, but he was really an office boy, but a good friend and one of my best friends, yeah. He died a few years ago, and I buried him in Arlington, Virginia.
Well, that must have been a nice tribute for you to be able to...
Well, it was nice for me. It was a great honor, and I still correspond with his family. His wife is in assisted care now in Alexandria, Virginia, and he has two sons who run a travel business in Washington, D.C. So we see them too when we go back. Yeah.
And where did the war end for you?
Well, the war ended in Torboli and up near Riva at the head of Lake Garda, and we had just been through another bloody bath, coming across those tunnels and being shot at with ACAC guns from naval guns from the German side across the lake, and that was rather exciting. And made it into a little town called Naga, which is near Torboli and Riva. They're all together. But that was a road that took you to Brenner Pass. So I met a Czech group there who were so glad to be. They were impressed into the German army, and then this meant they would be released. On May 2nd, the war ended. Darby had been killed, of course, of Task 45, and we were bivouacked in a building, and Wolf and von Singer, who were generals of the German army, were brought down by a military escort of our people and passed through our squad. We passed them back to higher authority. They were brought back to surrender formally to our division officers, General Hayes and so on.
And then I know after that war, where the war ended in the European campaign, you were in the United States when VJ Day was declared?
No, not quite. We, after May 2nd, we soon were sent to the Trieste area of Yugoslavia and Italy. That was Italian. Trieste still is an inside town. The circling is Yugoslavian, Slovenian, and Croatian. But in those days, of course, Tito wanted to consolidate as much of the Italian border area, and we didn't want him to expand. So we were sent to what was called the Morgan Line, which is a British general, named after a British general, that went from Trieste all the way up to the Dolomite Mountains in Slovenia. And we were assigned to Slovenia in a little town called Breda de Soto. I saw it 4 years ago. Yeah. Mary and I were up there and saw the place where we were bivouacked for several weeks. So we were in the Army of Occupation for a few weeks, a couple of months. Went back to Florence and then came back on a Liberty ship, or I think it was a Liberty ship, and on our way over, we thought we were going to Tokyo, but then the atomic bomb shortened the war, and I was sent back to the camp from which I was inducted in Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, and then we were all given leaves, for 30 days, and I went back to Washington to be with my good friend John Julian, who had gone back there, and went down to his home in North Carolina and had a grand time. And then I went back to Camp McCoy, and after a few weeks, when I was there, I was assigned to be a separations counselor, I guess it's called. In other words, the men were going out, what do you want to do, what are you going to become, and help them make connections for what they were going to be doing. And wrote up reports for that, kind of a fill-up time. Then was separated from the service November 17th, 1945, yeah.
What did you do after the war?
After the war, I continued my education in Connecticut at Trinity College, got my undergraduate degree, and then I went to graduate school for the ministry at a seminary called the Episcopal Seminary of Virginia, in Alexandria, Virginia. And I was there for 3 years, and then became a clergyman back in my home state, which was really Minnesota. And I started my ministry in Minnesota in 2 little rural towns, and went to suburban Minneapolis and helped build a church there, and was there 13 years. Then I went to Yakima, Washington, was there 13 years. And then went back to Minnesota, where I'd been in high school, where my father was the rector of the church, and I became rector of the church there for 5.5 years, and then retired. And I've been in the ministry since 1951, so that makes it, 54 years?
Yeah.
Something like that.
It's quite a long time.
Yeah, and I have the honor of being the National Chaplain of the 10th Mountain Division. The previous 3 chaplains were all ordained clergymen and chaplains in the service. One of them was Moran, who was a division chaplain. There were several, maybe a dozen or more chaplains, and he was the chief chaplain, a Roman Catholic, who later became a Monsignor and bishop. And he was the first association chaplain after the war. And then there was a man by the name of Gromsky, who I don't know about much, but he became a chaplain. And then my predecessor was Fred Jewell, and he, after he died, I was appointed National Chaplain. And I've been at that for 4 years.
If you were to sum up your time serving with the 10th Mountain Division, what would you say?
Of all my lifetime so far?
Yeah, if you just had to sum up in being with the 10th, what would you say?
Every experience was an adventure, would be my summary. I was positive, gung-ho, and look back on it as one of as the highlight of my life, except for my marriage to my good wife Mary of 55 years. And so it really was a memorable experience and helped make a man out of me, I think, as much of a man as I am. In other words, we grew up in the service, made some wonderful friends, and it's a very bonded division association now, and we're awfully glad to be with 10th Light and to know that it's carrying on with the descendants. And it's a great honor to be with you and share that experience.
Well, the honor is really ours, and thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you.